Anybody know what that is? Can everybody see the chat?
We did use it to do that a while back. Yeah.
If not, then I'll just share my screen. Is it
The
set up?
inverse square law.
Okay, let me see if I can set my,
Yeah, you're set up to be able to share your screen.
okay, great. Thank you, Chuck. All right. Anybody want to guess what that might be and how it applies to photography for us and how it might be on the CPP study exam in some way, shape, or form? How about equivalent exposure? Oops. These are just a couple of key terms. Another one would be the exposure, or exposure triangle, shall we say. So these are kind of broad terms, but they certainly are important if you're setting up a shot outdoors, for example, with strobe flashes. And if you want to balance your lighting, or if you want to overpower your lighting, and it could also apply indoors or outdoors, depending on what your situation is. So yesterday, I took my light meter outside and measured the intensity, light intensity of the sun, and found out that at 250th of a second, I had to set my f-stop at f16, and my ISO was at 80. So low ISO, relatively fast shutter speed, and a small aperture. You might call that the, actually, I'm sorry, my f-stop was at f11 at 250th of a second. So if you take the Sunny 16 rule, there's another thing I'm going to write down here. Just forgive me for writing down too many things, but here's another thing to be aware of. This is from many years ago. Whoops, one rule. Sunny 16 rule. So in bright sunshine, you would expect to have the right exposure if you had your f-stop at 16, the shutter speed at 125th of a second, and your ISO at 100. That's called the Sunny 16 rule. And then if you want to get an equivalent exposure, what do? I'm going to ask any students here when I answer that one. Anybody? Do we have any students here? That would be the first thing to ask. Okay, wait till, maybe I'm jumping in too fast here.
I'm here, Steve. I just didn't hear the question.
Hi, Deb.
Hi.
Oh, so the Sunny 16 rule, and this is back from the film days, which I'm a part of for many, many years, says that in sunny, bright sunny conditions, which of course we just had the summer solstice, and here in Oregon, it was 95 degrees yesterday, and at midday, the sun was strong. Now, not as strong as it is, for example, down at the equator, which I've been to, but certainly strong. And so I measured it with my light meter, and I measured it with the incident light meter to see how much light was coming in. And I found out that, in fact, at 250th of a second, my f-stop should be f11. It was measuring f11 on my in 250th of a second shutter speed, f11, and ISO 100. Actually, it was 80, but for your Sunny 16 rule was 100 ISO, 125th of a second at f16. So if you take the equivalent exposure, what do? I'll give you a couple of hints there. How would you make the equivalent exposure if you wanted to use a different shutter speed or a different f-stop or a different ISO? There's your exposure triangle. Anybody? Any student, I should say. Waiting for somebody to connect the audio. Said he was a student. Let's just wait until people get settled in. Probably the best thing to do.
I'm sorry, Steve. I am here at work, and as soon as you got ready to ask it, someone came in.
Okay. No, there's no rush. We're here, I hope, to support each other, to have fun. and to help the CPP candidates, those who have declared and those who have not declared yet, to pass these tests, pass the written exam and pass the image submission. So that's my goal, is to help people to pass those hurdles in becoming a certified professional photographer with the Professional Photographers of America organization and nonprofit organization, and go on to succeed in their careers as photographers, or whatever their goals might be in being a photographer. Those are my goals as a certified professional photographer liaison. Anybody here? Can everybody hear me okay? Can you see me? Any objection?
I
What I'm
second
saying?
that. No, I'm kidding. I'm
Any
hoping that
objections to what I'm saying?
everyone will put where they're from, which state they're from, so we know who their
There's- I guess,
liaison might be.
let's give people a few minutes to settle in here. All right. Looks like we got a lot of people logging in, so we'll just wait for that to happen. Then we'll find out where each person is on their journey as a photographer and support them in that journey equally. Let's see. How's the weather there in Georgia, Chuck?
It's kind of wet right now.
Yeah, humid, hot.
Yeah, humid, hot,
Yeah.
and raining.
Okay.
Yay, Vision Lounge.
Yeah. Vision Lounge.
Doing well.
Hello. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get the mic together. I'm driving as well. How are y'all doing?
Sounds like Corey's voice. Is that Corey?
Yes, it is. I'm trying to change everything right now.
There you are. Good to see you.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
All righty. Great. Well, one of the things about Zoom is that anything you type into the chat, the people who come later, they can't see it. So I'm going to have to, I'll just copy and paste it in again. These are the things I've talked about so far, very briefly.
Okay.
Just a minute here. That one is a mistake. There we go. Inverse square law, equivalent exposure triangle, the Sunny 16 rule. Any of those things sound familiar? If not, then you come to the right place. Hi, Lisa.
I'm not muted. Sorry, I'm trying to, I
Oh, that's
am looking
okay.
at you guys. My camera's off to the side, so I may look like I'm not looking, but I really am.
That's okay. Are you a CPP candidate, or what's your
Yes.
status?
Yes, I just declared and
Oh, wonderful.
yeah.
Okay, awesome. So you have not taken the exam yet, right?
No, not yet. I'm, gonna take it Friday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay, well, we'll do our best to help you with that.
thank you.
Lisa,
It
where
looks
are
like
you in
David-
Virginia?
Woodbridge?
Excellent. I'm in Loudoun County. Nice meeting
Oh,
you.
okay, you too. So I'm like trying to look here, but I know you're here. Nice to meet you.
There you go. There's a CPP liaison near you. So, Christy Bell,
Yep. Nice seeing you guys.
definitely. And looks like Richard Roth's having trouble connecting the audio. It's been going on for quite a while. So I hope he'll be able to manage that technical hurdle. And then we have someone with a phone number who I don't know who they are. Maybe they called in on their phone. Maybe they could identify themselves. It's a 509
Oh,
prefix.
yes. That's David Roth. Yeah, good afternoon. Apologies. I'm in an office setting. That's why I had to.
Oh, okay, okay.
In case I have to mute, but that's fine. So, and I couldn't get my wireless to connect to the company laptop, so I dialed in. But anyway, hi everybody. I'm outside of Boston. Just joined the declared about maybe a week ago, and bought a couple of those online courses, and I'm powering through the first one about halfway through.
Wonderful. Which course are you taking, Richard?
Oh, I'm trying to remember the two guys. I bought both of them.
Okay.
I can't remember the fellow. I want to say his name is Steve also.
Steve Kozak?
I can't remember. Yeah, Steve Kozak. He's sitting at a desk through the majority of the thing, giving lots of acronyms and stuff. Yeah, he's really good. Yeah, it's good.
Yes, he is. In fact, I'll probably reference some of his material today. I also took his course before I took the CPP exam, and it helped me do very well on it. So I recommend his course. But I think there's a couple of people who are offering courses, at least two that are recognized by the PPA, and there's other ones as well. It doesn't really matter where you get your information as long as you get it right.
Right.
So, okay. So do you have any questions about any comment? You were here when I mentioned the inverse square law, and that would be the inverse square law of light. But it also applies to gravity, to sound, to radiation, electricity. Inverse square law is very interesting. Who else is a student here? Corey is.
Yes.
You're driving, Corey?
I'm parked because I want to get all this. I'm about to park and go get some food, and then I'm gonna sit through the whole class. So I'm not gonna drive while y'all doing this.
Yeah, be careful driving and talking. Is it hot there? Where are you?
I'm in Alabama currently. My wife, she just bought a rental property, and I'm supposedly going to fix everything up. So I'm just on my way back.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is it hot there in Alabama?
Yes, and it's raining.
Oh, same as Georgia. I mean, of course, similar area. That's right. Tag country, we call it. Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia. I'm a caver, by the way, vertical caver. So I've been there many times. I know the area. This time of year, it can be really very high humidity and hot temperatures, right? Yeah, I think so. So let's see, how many others? We've got Lisa, and we've got Richard and Corey. And let's see, Deb, did you get your exam done yet? Taken it yet?
No, I haven't. No, I had to reschedule it. So it's on the 14th, July 14th.
Okay, wonderful. Are you going through the Proctor?
Proctor.
Yeah.
Yes.
They'll be fine. They're nice people. They're in the Philippines. They're just trying to do their job.
Yes.
They're cool.
Yes.
I love the people in the Philippines. I've been there a couple times and worked there. What about Marion Maccabee? Who's that? Can't hear you or see you. Marion? Can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you, what's your status in the program?
I'm just listening in. I'm in Georgia, and I just happened to see this pop up on Facebook. I don't have any intentions of declaring, but because I had some questions earlier that I was trying to get answered from Lay, but
Okay.
I just happened to see this pop up and thought I'd listen in and see if I changed my mind or not.
Sure. Are you a photographer?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. But you no intention of declaring at this time? If I heard you
My mind may change after I listen in, but so far, no intentions. I don't really have a reason to, unless my mind gets changed.
Okay, let us know how we can answer your questions and satisfy your curiosity about the process. We're here to help. Aren't we?
I have plenty of friends that are, but I'm an old guy. I'm not sure if it'd benefit me or not. So.
Okay, well, I'll be 69 in September, so I don't know if that makes me an old guy or not, but.
Not yet, but you might be on your way.
Okay, thanks, Maria. Thank you. So here we have this inverse square law. Does anybody have a guess of what that might be and how we can use it in photography?
How
Well,
the light falls off, it's the light falls off at twice the, I can't remember how to explain it properly, but basically it's the fall off of light. For, if you move it a foot, it falls off twice the distance behind the subject, something
yeah,
along those
that's
lines.
one.
Is that
That's
correct?
one of the aspects of it. So I'm going to share my screen here. Let me find the right place. Yeah, there it is, right there. And I'm going to share my screen and show you a couple things. Let's see. See, probably easier and people can understand it better if I do it that way. So here we go. Now this is from the glossary. I don't know if everybody can see this. Actually, I'm going to drop this down to the bottom.
It's unreadable. The text is.
law.
Yeah, I can't see it either.
Okay, let me blow it up so it's bigger. Oh,
It's, there we go.
just a minute. I got it.
That's readable now.
Is that better?
Yes.
So it's a law of, this is according to the glossary that comes from the Quizlet that was put up there, I think by Julia Boyd, if I'm correct, from the PPA. It's a law of physics stating that the intensity of illumination is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between light and subject. This means that if the distance between light and subject is doubled, light reaching the subject will be only 1/4 of the original illumination. We can use that when we work with equivalent exposure. So when we move our lights away or closer to our subject, for example. Now, with regard to light fall off, I'm going to show you another diagram here. And, oh boy, find it. Wait a minute. Here it is. Oh, that's another one. Sorry, let me get the right place. So it drops off very quickly, and then as you get further away, the effect is less. And actually, I'm going to show you the one for sound because I think it's a little clearer diagram. Let me see here. Can everybody see that? No? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So you can see this is what they call a Cartesian graph, I think. It shows the fall off is very rapid at first, and then it levels out as you get further away from the point source. And this is for sound, but in the absence of any reflections or reverb, it's the same as light, essentially, is my understanding. If I'm incorrect, please correct me. I don't pretend to know everything. And so it's interesting to see how the fall off is very rapid when you're moving away from the point source, actually. So that means that if you're going to do, let me stop sharing for a minute. If you're going to use strobe lights, for example, and you want to use lighting modifiers, then you should be paying attention to a couple of things. One is how close the light is to what you want to illuminate. In other words, if you're using something like this, you get it. It's a very small beauty dish. I don't know if you can see it. I'm gonna have to. So I got this. Anyway, this is a beauty dish, metal one with a silver coating. And if you want to use this, this is only 12 inches across, really little one. I've got about 3 different sizes of them. But if you want to use that, you have to be pretty close to your subject, and it will do a nice fall off for doing portrait photography. Am I losing anybody so far? But if you move it away, what's going to happen?
The
Let's
light
hear the
power
answer.
will decrease, and the subject is going to be a little dimmer.
I'm sorry, Corey, go ahead.
I said the light source is going to decrease.
Right, the
And the
intensity
subject
is
will
going
be
to, go ahead, go ahead.
I said, and the subject is going to be dimmer, or like you was about to say, the light's going to decrease on that area of the subject.
Right, right. So the fall off is going to be really rapid as soon as when you start to when you're closer to it. I mean, to your subject, you're going to have a rapid fall off, which is nice for portrait photography. However, if it's something like a beauty dish and it's got this silver surface, then you're getting a little too far ahead. You're going to have specular highlights probably, and it depends on the angle, but you can show the texture of the skin quite well. Now, if you have someone that is perhaps older or has skin flaws that you don't want to have to correct in post, then you might want to use something like a softbox because it will give a softer light, more diffuse light, or you can put a sock over this thing or a grid to focus the light more precisely. There's ways to use lighting modifiers and work with the inverse square law of light, and also work with the sizes of your light source to get the effects that you want. I hope I'm not going too much out in left field here. So what's our exposure triangle and what does that mean to us? Anybody want to take a guess at what that is?
The exposure
It's your
triangle.
relationship. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead because I spoke last time. Go ahead.
All right. It's just your relationship with your shutter speed, your f-stop, and your ISO. So
Right.
I was just going to apply because you had jumped into the Sunny 16. You know, I understand, I've heard of it, but I'm trying to figure out why one would use it. And, you know, it's like saying that standard ambient temperature is 15 degrees Celsius, you know, at sea level, but it never is, you know, and it decreases 2 degrees per 1,000 feet. But it's never going to do that. So when you look at this, why would you even start with a Sunny 16 when we have light meters, we know how to expose? You know, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, it's because it works, and actually, because of equivalent exposure, it gives you a very good way to achieve that. So if you're going to move well, let's see, if you're going to change your shutter speed and your aperture, then you need to know, and also your ISO, you need to know how those work together in the equivalent exposure.
Yeah.
And the Sunny 16 rule actually works quite well for that. Anybody else want to help me answer that? Yeah. If I'm not answering it correctly, I will go into it. But if the ISO is, for example, if you go from 100 ISO to 200, then your sensor is going to be picking up twice as much light. And so
Right.
that means you're going to have to adjust your shutter speed, right?
Or your aperture.
Or your aperture. So
Right. So,
Okay,
but so basically, what is
the
Sunny
16 rule?
16 again? It's so it's 100 ISO, 1/125th of a second, and what's the aperture on that?
F16. That's for a bright sunny day.
F16. Oh, so that's where the Sunny 16 comes. All right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
all
right.
right, I get you.
Yeah. Oh, I got to put this down, not break it. Now, here's a interesting thing. If you're outside, is that the weather's been, super bright sun, and some people they want to, especially with the pandemic, that maybe you want to take portraits outdoors. However, let's say you want a shallow depth of field. What does that mean? Shallow depth of field, usually.
Wide open aperture.
Right, and why would that be a shallow depth of field?
Really depends on the lens you're using, but it's always a shallower depth of field because your aperture is wider and your focal plane is shorter.
There you go. There's a couple other ways to accomplish it, but that is certainly one way. And so if you have a very bright sunny day and you want to use a shallow depth of field, and let's say you have a lens like on my camera here is at f1.2, which is pretty fast. And that's a very shallow depth of field. Maybe you only get one eye in focus if the person has their head turned. You might want to stop that down to maybe f1.4, f2, f2.8, like that, and see if you can get their both eyes in focus. However, when you got a bright sunny day, you got a problem. What is that problem?
When you stop
You
it
may
down
not-
that much, it's going to overexpose the image or the subject.
Yeah, you're going to be overexposed, it's going to be blown out because with a shallow depth of field, you got a problem. Now, how can you remedy that? Well, a couple different ways. Let's have the students answer. How about Lisa? What do you think, Lisa?
You would have to make the aperture smaller.
Yeah.
So not smaller in diameter, bigger in number.
Right. Then what would that do to your depth of field though?
It would increase your depth of field.
That's right. And that might mean that instead of having that beautiful bokeh, how should I say? Bokeh?
Okay.
Okay, bokeh. You know, the blurry little light balls in the background in this, so you don't really see your background. You might have more of your background in focus, and that may or may not, it depends on what you want to achieve. It may take the focus away from your subject. So if you want to have that beautiful bokeh in the background, then you can do a couple of things.
Change
What are they?
ISO.
Lower your shutter speed, increase your shutter speed, and lower your ISO, the lowest native
Yeah,
ISO you
that's
can get.
right.
And if you run out of those options, you can throw in an ND filter.
Well, I was going to get to that, but you beat me to it, Corey. Just a minute now. Darn you. You're too smart, you know that. All right, so here's another way before I get to the ND filters. That means neutral density, by the way. You can move your subject further away from your background, right? Because then you can isolate them more. You can isolate them more in your depth of field away from your background. So that's understanding your the way that your lens is working with your focal plane and your hyperfocal distance. So that's another way you can do it. There's a lot of ways to achieve it, but sometimes you won't be able to move them away from the background. If you're in a tight space like I have here when I was doing my shooting at my house. And so the best thing to do, in my opinion, is a neutral density filter. What will that do?
You could save a few stops depending on what your filter is. You can gain 3 stops, allow you to shoot wide open and not run out of shutter speed and still shoot at a lower ISO.
That's exactly right, Richard. Good answer.
David,
Yeah.
yeah, David, that's right. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, what was your name?
David, I'm the guy on the phone.
Oh, sorry.
Don't worry. David,
Yeah, I can't
David, D with a D, David.
Oh,
yeah.
now I see it.
I know you can't see who it is, yeah.
David Roth, I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
mixed up.
yeah, no worries, no.
I apologize. I couldn't see your name because it keeps saying connecting to audio. But if I mouse over it, then I can
Right.
see your name. David Roth.
Yeah,
Okay.
no worries, no.
Sorry. So you're right. Now here's the limitation for that. You have to have enough light to do that, because if you're shooting in dim conditions, a neutral density filter won't work. And why is that?
Because you won't have enough light. You have to balance it too. And if you don't want to, you're still trying to stay wide for your shallow depth of field, and you want to maybe be in the sweet spot of your lens, kind of a balance. I wouldn't throw it on until you run out of, if you get too high of a shutter speed beyond what you want, or uncomfortable with your ISO.
That's right. Now, what limits? What other aspects do you think might affect your shutter speed and your flash photography? What would you be looking at?
The moving subject.
A moving subject. That's a good answer. What else? And why would that be?
But you may want to stop the action. You may not need to. It really depends. Your shutter speed is going to be predicated on your subject, and you may have motion behind it, depending on the effect and what you're trying to do artistically. You know, it's going to determine what you've already determined where you want to be with your aperture. So the next 2 variables, your ISO and your shutter speed, and which is going to take priority in your triangle. That's
right. And we all know, I would hope that what happens with a high ISO, as it gets higher, what happens with that?
Get noise.
Thank you, Corey. David?
Noise, yeah, we all said it.
Yeah. Noise. So we want to keep the ISO as low as possible, I think. And then the shutter speed, there's another factor that we should think about with regard to shutter speed and strobe photography. And what would that be? Anybody?
Camera shake, movement.
Camera shake, yeah. Well, that's your stop.
Handheld, whether you're on a tripod or handheld.
I like to shoot handheld because I like to move fast. But if you want to have it on a tripod, that's certainly an option.
Did we say ambient light?
That shutter speed.
Sorry, Corey was saying something.
Did we say ambient light?
Yeah, we're getting to that too. We're getting to that for sure, how to balance that. But one thing here is that we want to think about our high-speed sync limitation of our camera, right? And so we want to keep the shutter speed, if we're shooting in manual mode, so you could be either a TTL, which is through the lens, manual, or multi is another one. if you're doing like stop action type of thing, or high-speed sync. And to keep it out of high-speed sync, there's usually a limitation. My camera can shoot it up to 250th of a second and not go into high-speed sync. Other cameras might be 200th of a second, like that. So why do we want to do that? Well, we want to keep it, we want to balance it with the ambient light. We want to control everything as much as possible. So that's I don't, looks like somebody's typing here in the chat. I really can't read it right now. If you want to say something, then just let me know. So I don't want to get distracted by the chat. In fact, I'm going to turn it off so I can't see it. Now, if you want to say something, Chris, let me know, okay? Directly. It's just distracting to see like another conversation going on in the chat when I'm trying to speak. Okay. So let's go back to this. When we're shooting outdoors, and Corey is really on the right path here with his perception. We want to, okay, you can think about this. Do you want to completely overpower all of the ambient light, even if you're outdoors? Well, you might be able to. It depends on a couple of things, right? It depends on how much flash power you got and the effect you want to achieve. Those are a couple of things. Or do you want to achieve more of a natural light and use the available ambient light to your advantage? For me, I prefer to work in that latter category. And if so, then how would we achieve that if we're out in the field with a client and we're doing a portrait session? So think about what that means and how you would achieve it. How would you meter for it? And what kind of lights would you use? What kind of lighting modifiers would you use? Would you try, there's a couple of options. Now, let's say that the sun is really strong, and so you put a scrim behind it, or even a flag, or you move your client into a shady spot that's easier to deal with. You can do that, certainly. It depends on what your objective is and what your limitation is with the environment that you're shooting in. Am I on the right path so far? If I'm not, let me know. So these are considerations that you'll find when you're out in the field or in a studio or in someone's home or their business, whatever the lighting situation happens to be. Outdoors in very bright sunlight during the middle of the day is definitely, people say that's one of the most challenging environments to shoot in, but it doesn't have to be. There are ways that you can use that to your advantage. You get absolutely gorgeous portrait shots. And that's really where I'm going here, is to talk about how you could use that to your advantage, and also how you can use your understanding of this to answer questions on the test. There's a 100-question CPP multiple choice exam. And also when you're shooting Sherman, let me put a challenge to you. Could you shoot the Sherman images outside in bright sunlight with your flash and control it? Think about that. Now that's a challenge, isn't it? That's a good one too. So these are things we can think about. Now, getting back to Corey's his question about ambient light. If you have, what are the three lights that we might be talking about here? Or the three or it could be just one light. Normally, when you put a client outside and you have sunlight behind them, maybe right on top of them if it's noon, but generally you want it to either be in the morning or the afternoon where the sun is at a lower angle. And then you position your client so the sun is coming from behind them. We call that a rim light, RIM, or a backlight, depending on how you want to call it. In other words, you want to have that halo, you know, their hair lit up from the back. It gives a beautiful look. But if you don't have enough light in the front, what happens? What's the word? What's the effect that happens when you have just only light in the back? Sorry?
You'll silhouette them if you don't use a
silhouette.
You can use
yeah, that's right.
Reflector for fill, off-camera flash, whatever you need to do to.
Yeah, good answer, David. So it's going to be a silhouette. Their face is going to be dark, right? So then how do you do that? Do you use a reflector? You could use a reflector and reflect the sun back into their face, right? Or you might want to use a studio strobe, put it on a beauty dish, or maybe a soft box, a strip box, parabolic reflector, umbrella, depending on what you want to do. And you might want to position that to get a certain effect. Maybe you want to get a broad light, a short light, a loop light, a butterfly light, a Rembrandt light, depending on how you want to position that. And then you're going to have a ratio, a lighting ratio. Could be 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1, 8 to 1, whatever it is. You have to determine what that is and how to meter for it, how to set that up. Am I going too fast? All right, so let's say that you have a rim light. The rim light's the sun, and you got one or two lights, maybe three, and you're out in the field and you want to set this up quick because you know why? Conditions are changing. They could be changing rapidly depending on the weather conditions. Maybe you've got clouds moving across. Maybe you got a storm coming in like Chuck and Corey, you know, Chuck's in Georgia, Corey's in Alabama. It's wet. In other words, it's a cloudy sky, but maybe there's some sun breaks. I don't know. It could be changing. So in other words, you generally have to move faster when you're outdoors and set your conditions up to handle what you got to deal with. How am I doing so far? How do we balance ambient light with strobe lights in the field during the middle of the day? You start out with the sun because that's your light, your light source, right? Generally, people put it behind the person. Then we've got a problem to avoid the silhouette. We want to light our subject or subjects. I haven't got to the group shots yet. From the front and generally from one side. And maybe the light reflecting off the ground might be enough fill, or you might want to add a reflector or another light. So how do we meter for that, and how do we do that? Anybody have an answer? Lisa, what do you think? No. And let me put this.
I think it depends on.
Sorry.
Depends on your time frame, right? Depends on, obviously, if it's a setting sun, you're under the gun. But
yeah.
if I had a light meter, I'd meter right under the chin of the person,
Yep.
set my flash to expose. If I want to do fill, then I might do minus 0.7, minus a stop, whatever I was looking for fill flash. If it's off camera, I might use full 1-to-1 on the chin, but I would initially meter the camera for the backlight, for the ambient light, what I wanted behind him.
Right now, what type of light meter is generally in a camera? Is it an incident light meter or a reflective light meter?
Reflective.
That's right. Good answer. And what does that mean?
And you're measuring the light off the subject.
Correct. Very good. You're doing great. I like to have fun with this. And this is fun, isn't it? Are we having fun? I hope we are. We're thinking, aren't we? And we're helping each other. That's what counts. That's what counts here. And I hope that it's going to help everybody pass the exam and become better photographers and just better human beings. So now we have, let's talk about the balance. When I measured the sunlight, I had the sunny 16 rule this was, I don't know, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's just 95 degrees and the sun is there really strong, clear sky. So my Kelvin temperature is probably going to be what? That's the other thing, is a white balance.
5,700, 5,640.
5,500, yeah, somewhere in that range, but 5,500 is it's said. You can take a gray card and have the client hold that in front of them and take a custom white balance if you want to, where you can set the Kelvin temperature to what you want. Now, here's the other thing. If once you use your flash, that could throw it off, but only what I've heard is, and I have to do more experimentation with this myself, is that generally it's a problem during the golden hour. And what is the golden hour?
1 hour before sunset.
And 1 hour after sunrise. Right. And so at that time, what do you think the light temperature is doing with the Kelvin scale?
Yellow.
Getting more yellow. And what does that mean? Thank you, Lisa. Good job.
3,300, I think.
Yeah, it could be dropping down in the 3,000 range. Could be. And possibly quite rapidly changing, which would kind of screw up your portrait session if you weren't prepared for it. Now, what are the ways that we can try to handle that? on your camera settings.
Go to manual Kelvin white balance. Is it? But you said it's going to warm, not get colder, right? Is the
No,
sunrise
let's,
more reflective? Is it getting colder? Is the Kelvin temperature decreasing as the sun comes up?
it's actually increasing as the sun comes up and decreasing as it goes down.
Right,
So
okay.
if you want a really blue sky, what direction do you think that Kelvin temperature goes to?
Well, you make it colder.
It goes toward 10,000, okay? It goes higher. Yeah, it goes 6,000, 6,500, 7,000, like that. Really
Okay.
deep blue sky. And if you're going into a sunset color, which is what the reds and gold and yellow, there's probably green in there. Of course, red and green make what color? Huh?
You got to be blue. I haven't done the color wheel part of the course yet, but I
All right,
imagine
well,
it's
yeah, let's-
RGB is your three
RGB,
of the not of the 9.
All right, so anyway, it's going to be a warmer color, shall we say, and that means a lower Kelvin temperature. So what they say, a colder color, which should be toward blue, would be a high Kelvin temperature, right? All day long, yesterday and next Sunday, that would be true, I think, unless something changes. Okay, so there's a couple ways to handle it. You can set it to auto ISO, or you could fix it in post. Or another way that I've heard that I want to try out, which I think is a brilliant idea, is to use your strip box or your soft box as with a scrim on it, your sock in front of it, and aim that so the sun is reflecting off your softbox into the subject's face or their body, and that will automatically ensure that you have the right the right Kelvin temperature for your white balance. If you set it to auto and let the softbox reflect the sun, and then your flash temperature is going to be adjusted by the reflection of the sun and balance out. I think that's a brilliant technique. I want to see if it's true. Anybody ever done that? You understand what I'm saying or not? You use the softbox, you angle it so the sun's coming this way, and it bounces off your softbox, and it bounces that light into the light temperature, I should say, with the flash into the person's face, and that balances your white balance during the golden hour.
Only balances
Try it out, see if it works. A couple people say it works. Just a fix.
So it's just a mix of ambient and flash is what you're doing then. Is what you're
Exactly.
saying. 'Cause otherwise,
That's
the flash would. All right.
The flash.
Reflective and flash is what I mean.
So my flashes, I've got the Godox flashes, my lights, and they're supposed to be, I think, around 5,600 degrees Kelvin, 5,500 to 5,600, give or take. And so if the sun is going into the golden hour, where it could be dropping into the 3,000 range, then I could have a problem with the flash and the ambient light not being the same, right? Or not right. Speak up if you haven't been speaking up. But think about this. And what I would like everybody to do is to go out there in the field while you got this beautiful summer weather and just try it out. Try it out and see what happens. Try out those beauty dishes, those soft boxes, those strip boxes. Try out your settings in your camera and see what works to balance the ambient light and flash. And now, why do I say balance? Do you want to completely overpower the sun and control the light without any input from the ambient light? If so, I would say that you're missing out on some beautiful results that you could get by using a balance. Now, there's natural light photographers that what they generally do, they'll try to light the person's face by setting a very low aperture, like f1.2, and then it tends to be kind of blown out, and their depth of field is going to be quite shallow. So they're not, or maybe they'll use a wall of a building or something to try to reflect light into the person. That's a legitimate technique. But here's the thing. You can experiment with this, and especially, I think, with the ND filters, and get some creative results and control what's happening more, but also don't throw away your ambient light and preserve your shadows. if you can, because that will sculpt the face and the body and give some interest to your subject rather than just using flat lighting. Now, what does flat lighting mean? Let me put that one out. Anybody? Flat lighting is opposed to contrast.
The sun would directly
Hard lighting?
on the subject would be flat lighting.
Sorry?
Let's say the sun were at my back as a photographer and it was right on your face. That's flat lighting. There's no shadows. There's no contrast to the image.
Right. No depth, no texture. And maybe we're using superlatives because it's not all black and white, unless that's what you're doing. Yeah, I just shoot black and white. No, I'm joking. In other words, there's shades of gray here, and also in our terms that maybe you're going to see some detail, but the term flat light generally means a pretty washed out appearance where you're not going to see a lot of detail. Now, you may want that. I mean, photography is art and science, so you may want both of those things, right? Depending on what you're trying to achieve. But if you want to overcome flat lighting, what would you do? Let me ask you that. How would you use your lighting ratios, for example? And what are those?
Could you repeat that last question?
Go ahead.
Could you repeat that last question?
Sure. How would you change a flat lighting situation into more of a contrast lighting? And how would you employ the placement? Maybe I'm being too broad here, but what's the first thing that you would try to do? We'll just take a step at a time. First thing you try to do to correct the flat lighting situation.
You can just move the light source to the left or to the right. You can create Rembrandt lighting, or you can create loop light, or you can put it above their head, do the butterfly, any of those types of things.
Right.
And that'll give you more dramatic lighting situation.
You can move the
Right.
subject.
If that was the question.
So pretty much we've been talking about shooting outdoors and using strobe lights because that was the focus of this session. So it'd be probably, I don't mind talking about the studio work too, but just for the sake of discussion, I'd like to keep it, if we could use outdoor situations.
Move the subject and move yourself.
There you go. That's a good answer. And so to get texture on a person's face, what do you think what direction should the light be going? Straight at them, from the side, the top, from the bottom?
45 degrees from the side at 45-degree angle.
Okay. Okay. So you want to kind of have the light going across at an angle, and that will tend to show more texture, would you say? More variation in the surface that you're shooting, right? Correct? Okay, and then the fall off, how would you manage the fall off? This goes back to the inverse square law of light. And the size of your light source.
The sun is your light source. You have very little control. Depending on how far your background is from the subject, whether you're going to cast a shadow or not, you don't want to, if you're talking about outside, and the fall off, if you're using fill light, depends on where you position your light. The closer it is, the quicker the fall off. The further away, the greater the shadow you're going to cast.
That's right. Good answer, David. You position your light closer if you want a faster fall off. Now, what about the size of the light? And the type of light?
Larger the light, the closer the light, the softer the light.
Sorry?
The closer it is, the larger it is, the softer it's going to be.
That's right. So if you want to take a great big softbox and you put it right next to the person, let's say 45 degrees over, maybe either at the 6 o'clock position or maybe 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock over to the side, depending on the effect that you want. Well, if it's a huge softbox, how's that fall off going to work? If you have a ordinary sized person and it's right next to him. Well, Marion, I haven't heard you say much. Yeah, what do you think? Release it.
Oh, you're muted.
I didn't get the last part of the question.
Okay, so let's say that you have a subject and you're making a choice about what type of a lighting modifier you're going to use, and you have, let's say, a 48-inch softbox, big one. would you, what kind of a fall off would you expect to see depending on where you put that? Or would you choose something else?
I don't know percentage wise, but if I was trying to get, if it was a female, I would probably be moving that in close, but I would be turning that light. I would do the 45%, you know, to the side and above, and then feather that light back to the left, well, to a side
Mhm.
to get a more subtle light, but still soft.
Okay, that's a
If
good
that
answer.
makes sense.
45 degrees, right? Not percent.
Sorry, degrees, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. And would you consider using something like a beauty dish? And what would happen if you used a beauty dish instead of a huge softbox?
I think I don't really have a beauty dish. I have a modified version of one, but I think you get a more directional light that way, depending on the depth of the dish. I actually don't have an official beauty dish. My dish is more like a deep box dish.
Okay. Okay. Lisa, what do you think?
With a beauty dish,
Well, size of modifier and where to put it for what are you trying to achieve? And what I'm getting at is, let's think about the light fall off with the inverse square of light, law of light. Because
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so if it was a beauty dish,
Mhm.
I would be trying for, I guess something more of like dark photos with like, I'm thinking like those little, the muscular one, I don't know what the gym workout ones with the
Hmm?
and to the right, and like I really wouldn't really work with them because I'm all about big soft boxes. Really.
Okay, so the muscular one, what are the muscular ones?
The gym photos.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you now. So you want to show the definition, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Gotcha. I understand now.
You're talking
All
about
right.
shooting fitness models.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a great answer, Lisa. So the thing is that you want to have definition, you want to show texture, you want to show a rapid fall off, right? Because that'll define the person's body, won't it? So it's the opposite of flat lighting. You're going to have a hard light, and then it depends on how close you have it and the angle where you're going to show your definition. And also your fall off and where that fall off falls on the person's body, right? That's why beauty dishes give such a beautiful light, because they're designed for that. They were designed by photographers in Hollywood for the actresses. They make them beautiful. Actually, that's the history of it. That's why they call them beauty dishes. Did you know that? Yeah, it's a good it's an interesting history to see where we come, where our profession of photography has been, and where we're going. And we can learn a lot from the past and move forward toward the future, because technology is changing rapidly, but some of the principles are really good, like the Sunny 16 rule, for example, equivalent exposure. Now, if you want to say something, I'm not reading the chat, just speak up, please.
Oh, yes, I did have a question. I didn't want to interrupt. What's the true difference between the beauty dish and I was listening, I still didn't concept it, between the softbox and the beauty dish.
Good question.
I don't really know what is the true difference between them.
Okay, that's a great question. I don't know if I can answer it right, but I'll try. Beauty dish is going to have a harsher light, so it's going to have a more rapid fall off than a softbox. But there's different kinds of beauty dishes, and there's different, as Marion said, there's different depths. So a proper one is going to be relatively shallow. And also it may have a light reflector in the middle. You should get one of those. You know what they look like. Well, I showed it to you. It has that silver disc in the middle.
Yep.
There's a purpose for that. You can set it either convex or concave, depending on the effect that you want to get. The size of the beauty dish is going to make a difference. You don't have to have a metal one. You can get a portable one that folds up. Those are really cool. The silver one is going to have a more specular and actually more efficient light output. So if you want something that's powerful enough to compete with the sun, you probably want to go with a silver one. Am I helping or confusing? Soft box is go ahead.
Steve,
Yes.
Steve, could I make a point? It's Christy.
Yeah. Yeah, hi, Christy.
Think about a light bulb analogy, you guys, when you think about light,
Yeah.
a plain
Uh-huh.
old light bulb. The
Right.
size of the light, as it was said earlier, the light source, the larger the light source, the more diffuse the light, the closer the light, right?
Yes,
So
right.
the larger the softbox, that'll produce less light fall off than a smaller softbox.
That's right.
So just think about that. Think about holding up a bare light bulb when you're moving that away from your subject and what that would do,
Right.
and then add your modifiers.
And Christy, I want to really thank you for bringing that up, because one of the very best portraits I've ever had taken of me by a professional photographer was back in January 1998 at the Hall of Dreams studio in Portland, Oregon. And the photographer was fantastic. And what he did, he had me stand in a darkened hallway, totally black. And he held up a bare light bulb that was plugged into the wall socket right next to my face and shot a picture. And that gave a very dramatic, I would say, a split, also you call it split light. Think about film noir and the dramatic effects that the photographers and the filmmakers got during the film noir age when they had that kind of lighting. So you have a dramatic, dark side of the face and a light side of the face, and you get these shadows that define the facial features, especially things like cheekbones and the jawline for a man, for a man or a woman. So it's going to define the shape of their face, maybe bring a little mystery in there. So bare light bulb held up very close is a very effective way to shoot a portrait, depending on what you're trying to achieve. Anybody, any other questions? We didn't really get into, we're almost out of time here, and we didn't get into any specific test questions. I did have that prepared. I don't know if we got time to go into that because we're almost out of time to answer those. But there are a few questions on the exam that will probably address some of these issues that we brought up, especially with things like the equivalent exposure, where you understand the exposure triangle and how those three elements work together to control the result. What are the three elements of the exposure triangle? Put that out to all the students here. Anybody?
Exposure,
Aperture, shutter speed, and ISO.
That's right. Right. And you understand how those work together?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, everybody knows everything. Why am I here?
Steve, I did have a question about
Yeah.
bellows real quick.
Yeah.
Do you
Go ahead.
only change one setting?
For which-
Because for bellows, like if
Well,
you
bellows
change,
is not on the exam anymore, I've heard.
oh, it's not? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Awesome.
Yeah. According to Guy T, it is currently, there's not on the exam. You think that's true, Chuck? Okay. I hope we're having fun here. If there's nothing else, I think I'm pretty much done here. We're right up at the top of the hour. And I want to thank everybody for being here.
Thank you very much thanks so much for the time today. I appreciate it. This is my first one to jump in, so I barely just even scratched upon the course, but yeah, some good stuff. Thank you.
You're very welcome, David.
And
Yep,
anybody
thank
from Virginia that needs a little help, feel free to reach out to me. I'm right around the corner.
Thank you, Christy.
All right, Lisa, and I know
We'll
Deb's here
chat
too.
later. Save your chat. Save your chat. It's a three. I don't even know what people said, so I'll have to look at it later. But there's the three dots on the bottom, and then save chat. All right. So I think I'm going to wrap this up. Anybody wants to stay for a few minutes? I can give you a few minutes, but I think that this session's probably over because we want to keep on time. Any other questions? Why?
So long, folks. Yep.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go too. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Y'all have a great one.
Okay, talk to you later.
All right.